Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marivete, for this invitation. And without further ado, I will start with the presentation so that we can have also time to discuss a bit later. Um, so, um, I would like to present. This is one of the recent works I was doing here at STIAS in the framework of my fellowship, and but the idea behind this work is coming from a series of things I've been doing with some association, especially right after my thesis in Germany. I've started working with the German cooperation in deploying community networks in Cameroon, the northern part of the country. And then I've been I've discussed with Association for Progressive Communications. They are based here in South Africa also. And we started thinking about how we can design a kind of regulatory framework for community networks in Francophone African countries. And so let's say, to foster the development and the deployment of such networks in Francophone countries. Because compared to English-speaking areas in Africa, there's a huge gap in terms of community networks. So, and when I finalized this work, I realized that we have another issue. We are just looking at community networks as um, um, infrastructure to provide connectivity to connect the unconnected, but it is far beyond that. There is a huge potential that we can tap in to address issue now related to AI, because the foundation or the foundation on which AI is relying is the connectivity. Without connectivity, we cannot have access to data, we cannot use the system that are developed. So, and after that, I wrote this paper after another project I was doing with the Hamburg Institute on advancing data justice research and practices, especially providing a kind of overview of what is going on in the global south. So I came out with that open op-ed paper from left behind to left out, generative AI or the next plan of the unconnected. And in that paper, I was raising the issue about the consequence of not being connected, especially at the level of data, the exclusion in data set, and also the impact now on the AI-based system that are developed without data of some communities, so the misrepresentation. And 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 one critical point I was raising here was about having better data, not bigger data, but better data that can really be relevant to the local community. And the next question now was how we can leverage community network to develop a kind of community data that can inform or be used to develop AI model that can now later be used in system or mobile application and so on to help the local community. So, but when I finalized this one, I realized that we really need a kind of strategy behind that. And I went through some AI strategy, AI policy throughout the continent to see if they are addressing the issue not of data set creation, but datafication. So that's why I started now looking at the issue, not only the dataset creation, but the datafication that can ease the process of producing data and data local relevant and at a and less expensive to train now model and have application that can be useful for the local population. So I went through the 29 AI strategy and policy, and here I will just try to be as let's say objective and also succinct as possible to help us to get an overview of what is inside the paper. But I will send you also the link at the end of the presentation so that you can also have access to the preprint that is online. So we have 8 steps, but I will try to go as quick as possible to focus on what is really important. So for the problem, we already know the problem about the underrepresentation in AI training data. We also know some figures about the GSMR study 2024, I think, on AI, stating that it is only 2% currently of African data in the AI training data in most of the models we have currently. Also, in terms of number of tokens, it's true that this study is from 2022, I think. Maybe there's a kind of increase with all the efforts that we observe throughout the continent. But the reality is that up to now, we are still struggling to really find a way we can really ease the process throughout the continent. So the consequence of the lack of AI training data we all know about on health, on agriculture, on facial recognition, and we are already aware also about the generative AI compounding that deficit, especially the unconnected communities, absent from training data, and we have at the end of the day marginalized output that can be really harmful for the local communities that are not represented in the data set. So up to now, the dominant response to that lack of AI data training is to launch annotation campaign. It is to have a kind of data collection initiative. Is to organize event like hackathon, datathon, and so on. And it's to acknowledge all the efforts that are going on throughout the continent for that. Those efforts are necessary, but what we can observe is a fundamental limitation, and that limitation is due to the fact that we are trying to treat a kind of structural problem as a logistic one. That means it is mainly the infrastructure deficit behind that we try to cover or to bridge with a kind of logistic approach of creating data set to bridge the lack of data sets that we observe throughout the continent. So to better understand what I'm trying to explain, I will start by having a kind of differentiation between the datafication and the dataset creations. So I will start with some definitions. So, and the first for datafications is the most relevant for me is the one from Meyer and Cookier, who define the datafication as putting phenomena in quantified form so they can be tabulated and analyzed. And the dataset creation now is rather a kind of deliberate, bonded, and labor-intensive activity oriented toward producing a specific data artifact for a defined analytical purpose. So, and from those definitions, we can have a kind of um, comparison on several dimensions. First of all, it is the nature. When we talk about datafication, we have a structural, infrastructural nature compared to a dataset creation that is usually a project level or artifactual, initiative. When we talk about datafications, it is also a kind of continuous, ongoing process compared to dataset that is episodic and time-bounded, usually aligned with the time, of the project. We can also see the datafication as something that can help to produce a persistent data stream compared to a static data artifact that we have usually at the end of a dataset creation campaign. So, and in datafication, we have a low infrastructure, not a low infrastructure. Usually the cost is low when the infrastructure already exists. So usually it is at the beginning, at the CapEx that we have to invest to create the basic infrastructure that can allow that data stream to be created so that we can have a kind of continuous and ongoing data stream compared to the data set creation that is somehow expensive at every stage because we have to recruit people, we have to define the protocol, we have to have some equipment depending on the type of data collection we are doing and so on. And we need to relaunch the process each time we need to create the data set or to update the data set. So we have several dimensions. I would like maybe to also consider the other one, especially the real time or the near real time that we can have with a datafication process compared to the data set creation. We also have the scalability because we can easily scale with datafication since it is a kind of continuous process compared to the data set. And usually datafication, we require a kind of digital public infrastructure on which we rely compared to the datafication that we require resources to mobilize the collection. And for example, now, when talking about datafication, especially in Africa, we can have things like M-Pesa and with the transaction log, and we can also have mobile health records. And so, for data set creation, we have all the corpora that are being created with in the framework of initiative like Masakane and so on. So here we have a kind of a layer. So to see the difference, usually we have the real world phenomena, right? At the bottom, and between the real world phenomena and the dataset creation, we should have the datafication infrastructure layer. What we are doing currently is that we are moving from the real world phenomena to the dataset creation. That is really expensive. But if we have the datafication layer in the middle, that can ease the process and help us now to gain advantages that we have just listed in the previous slide. So, in this study, what we do, we selected 9 AI policy. So The one from the African Union, Kenya, Nigeria, Zambia, Rwanda, Ghana, Egypt, Mauritius, and Ethiopia. And to analyze them, we we have four primary code families that we define. So the first is dataset creation language, and in this one we are looking um, for terms like collection, annotation, development, quality, repository, competition, governance of static artifact. For datafication language, we are looking for digital public infrastructure as a data source. We are looking for pipelines. We are looking for IoT. We are looking for explicit datafication term, especially the fourth. We are looking for longitudinal data. We are looking for infrastructure investment. And for the third code families, we are related to governance framing. We are looking for sovereignty, privacy and protection, community benefit, extractive risk. So, and we also have a code family related to absence. Absence markers here is just to identify missing link, for instance, between digital public infrastructure and data. When we don't have a link between the digital public infrastructure and data, for instance, or when we don't have a link between strategy and pipeline, or data set and sustainability, or digital economy and data framing, this is just the proof that there is not really a kind of datafication. Even if the terms appears, there is no link between them to represent the datafication process. So, and we analyze all those 9 documents, and we identify 288 coded segments. So 120 are related to datafication, to dataset creation. 50 are related to datafication. 76 are absence markers, and 42 are governance framing segments. So, but through all the 9 documents, none of them is mentioning explicitly datafications. And we also observe that the global ratio between data creation language and datafication language is 2.4 for 1. So, if we remove, for instance, because we have the case of the Ethiopia AI strategy, that is somehow in the opposite direction of all the 8 AI strategy or policy that we studied. So the case of Rwanda, in Rwanda we have not a single datafication-oriented code to all the document. Maybe it is also because it's one of the first document. We don't know. We didn't make some speculation around that. And for the digital Ethiopia, we observe that so they are going in the opposite direction. That means that we have more coded segments related to datafication than coded segment related to dataset creation. So, and you can go through the paper later to have all the details. But here we like to highlight 3 consistent data creation patterns that we observe through all the 9 documents. So the first is that all those documents are looking at data as artifact to be built. So we have 44 occurrence of dataset development in all the 9 strategy. And the one that really struck us was the one of Ghana. And they state that by 2030, they should have 1 trillion tokens worth of Ghanaian data sets. This is a huge target. So, but what they did in the strategy is mainly framing that target as a kind of bonded accumulation, not as infrastructure that can help to produce the flow so that, or the stream, so that we can reach that goal at a certain point. So the second patent was that in those documents, infrastructure and data are parallel input. There's not direct link between infrastructure and data. Seeing like infrastructure producing the data that can help to inform to create data sets and to develop models that are relevant in each context. So for instance, we will have things like digital infrastructure, broadband, IoT, compute, and data sets that are listed separately. So there's not a kind of cause and effect between the infrastructure and the data. In the Kenya strategy, for instance, we will see a infrastructure pillar, and we will see also another data pillar, but both are not connected. So, and the last pattern is the event-based data mobilization. So we will see hackathon, datathon, AI challenge, and they are presented as the primary instrument in strategy like in Rwanda, Ghana, in Nigeria. So, but with such a instrument, we can only get a kind of frozen snapshot of data rather than a continuous pipeline that can help us to have a kind of fresh data that can, and longitudinal also data that can help us to develop more relevant local services. So I would like us to maybe have a look now at the Ethiopian exception. So in the Ethiopian strategy, we will see things like IoT infrastructure, they will talk about IoT infrastructure as a real-time data generation mechanisms. They will also talk about having kind of 600 petabyte of AI ready sovereign storage, 1 million of GPU hours. They are also talking about having electronic medical record integrated with national digital ID. They are also talking, and this is really important, about the e-waste regulation. This is really unique in all the 9 strategy we went through. And why are we looking especially at e-waste? Because if we are talking about datafication, that means that we should have a kind of let's say we should put in place infrastructure and so on. That means we should also pay attention to the e-waste and see how this can be also regulated. So these are very good points that we identify in the digital Ethiopia in the strategy, but they still produce some absence makers, especially they will talk about agricultural sensor as crop management tools rather than data sources. And the electronic medical record will be framed as patient care, not really see as something that can produce data to train some AI tools. And also, they will present the computing infrastructure as deployment capacity. So it's not really about storage from the data flow or the stream that are produced through the datafication process. So, and what we also observe is that no strategy statement in the World Corpus, despite the fact that what they have been presenting or exposing in the strategy is somehow linked to the datafication, but there is no direct link to the between the infrastructure and the AI data production. So, and now, why the dataset creation alone is not sufficient, especially in our context. So we will see three level of structural inadequacy. So the first is the scale, and for instance, as from the Ghanaian strategy looking to trillion of tokens. This cannot be reached only by a kind of data set creation process where we have only campaign and hackathon, datathon, and so on. We really need to have a kind of datafication process that can help us to reach that level. The second point is about the sustainability. Usually, when we the data set, the data set creation currently is mainly funded through project and so on. So, but beyond the project, how the data set can be sustained, this is a real issue. And the last point is the representativeness. So usually, the approach with dataset creation, we have teams working with some community to create a dataset, but we should acknowledge that usually it is difficult to reach some community in rural areas. It is difficult to involve elderly people. It is difficult also to engage with some linguistically marginalized community or economically informal. So, and so if we are not paying attention, we are going through a kind of language divide, especially if we are paying attention only to languages. We are going toward a kind of language divide where we will have some languages with a lot of resources, but other that are almost disappearing. So what we advocate here is not about having a kind of datafication just for datafication as it is happening in developed countries. No, it is about datafication for better data, not for bigger data. So, and why having the datafication for better data, not bigger data. The goal behind is to have a kind of lightweight, context-rich, community-governed data stream that are designed for Africa-specific resource constraints. So, and we should avoid replicating what is happening in developed countries for three main reasons. First of all, it is about the capital. We cannot afford to have capacity like developed countries, because the observation is simple. Up to now, what we have currently in terms of data centers, the large part is concentrated in South Africa, and it doesn't represent 1% of what is at the global stage. So the second reason is the energy. So it is critical, especially when we look at how data centers are consuming in terms of energy. We cannot afford that also. And the last point is about the e-waste.
I'm just going to say about 8 minutes before Q&A.
Yeah, okay. I will try to go fast. Thank you so much. And the last point is about the e-waste. So in the principle, we have three principles. The first is infrastructure before annotation, and the idea behind is to invest in digital identity system electronic health record system, mobile payment network, and especially community networks, because community networks can help us to bridge both the connectivity issue, but also provide the basic infrastructure for the datafication in the community. So, and from that point, we can also now go a bit beyond to add now governance, data governance, and so on at the local level. So the second point is the continuity before comprehensiveness. In fact, it is better for us to have a kind of maybe a sensor in in a plot or in the farm that can help us to get longitudinal data rather than have a survey that we will go to collect data at a certain time. And the last point is the sovereignty before openness. And for that, looking at the question like who control the data for what benefit, under what condition, and so on, I think we are moving, we are doing a smart move currently with a license like a nodal or a framework like ESU2 that are developed here in South Africa and in Kenya. So now we have a kind of four-tier datafication infrastructure model, and the first one is the mobile first. That means we rely on the existing assets in the community, and usually at that level, the datafication is mainly a kind of mobile apps that can help people, maybe in form of gamification, that can help them to interact and to produce the data at local level that can help now to train models, improve the service, and the service can be now used again by the community. So we have a kind of loop like that that can help to improve. The second one, tier 2, is the edge light. And at that level, we have a kind of, we can have maybe a sensor somewhere. We can have also the community networks that can help now to host the services that are developed or to collect the data through the sensor in the community. The tier 3 is mainly about leveraging data at the national level. It can be maybe API from mobile money to get access to some data to improve some services and so on. And the tier 4 is about a kind of federation. And at that level, we are no longer sharing data, but we are sharing weight that can help maybe to provide some information or to inform some decision at a higher level. And at the bottom of the model, we should have the governance layer. So and this is in fact the starting point. So, and at the governance layer, as I was saying, we can have nodal license and ESU2 framework. So, and now, the implication and research agenda for research, first of all, we need to expand the contribution beyond data set in what we are doing to the datafication infrastructure. And we also need to think about how we can deploy some kind of solar power sensor and co-design community data governance with the local community, and things also about the next generation of playbook, because up to now what we have as playbook, we are focusing on data set, but we should also think about how we can extend it not only to data set, but to the datafication process in general. So, and for African policymakers, we should also mandate electronic health record system with interoperability standards so that we can also leverage this for the development of local services. We should invest in national digital ID. We should create also regulatory environment for community networks deployment as datafication infrastructure, and develop also e-waste governance. for development in finance, we should go beyond the dataset creation, also to think about funding datafication infrastructure in community. We should also extend some initiative like community center connectivity initiative to include also things like sensor and edge computing in the procurement. And we also, for the global community, AI community, we should contribute mainly to open source datafication tool for low resource deployment, also support initiative like Nodal and Iso. So normally this is the second to last slide. So it is mainly about the research agenda. And here we have other questions that we need to look at going in that direction. It is, first of all, the comparative analysis of datafication infrastructure investment returns across African contexts. So taking maybe tier 1 and tier 2 deployment and compare what can help us to generate highest AI training value per dollar investment, for instance. This is a study that can also be done, but we will need really people that can be dedicated for that. We also have a kind of longitudinal evaluation of digital literacy co-production, because we think that the datafication can help us also to improve the digital literacy through mobile apps and so on. Because one point is to get the data, train the system, train the model, develop the system. And at the end of the day, we also ensure the adoption now by the local community. But if we have a gap, especially in data digital literacy, I'm not sure that the adoption at the end of the day will be as expected. And we also have the governance design for continuous data stream. And at that point, we need to see how we can have maybe a second version of Nodal to think now about the continuous data stream, not only about the data set. And we also have to look at the multilingual extension of this analysis, because we were focusing only on English document, not French one, especially Morocco, Algeria, and ECOWAS framework. So I will, so as a conclusion, currently the datafication, the data deficit in Africa is seen as a kind of logistic problem, but this is a structural one based on the infrastructure deficit. And up to now, the datafication is not really acknowledged in document in AI strategy. And Ethiopia is making an exception, but what they are doing, it is, let's say, putting or designing the stage for datafication without naming it datafication and without linking the different pieces of the puzzle. And the goal now is to think about the datafication for beta data that are lightweight, context-rich, community-governed, and ecologically responsible. So this is just a first idea of how we can move beyond only creating dataset, but start touching the datafication, especially in a kind of community-based approach. And you can have the link to the paper here to read, maybe make comments, or also look at maybe what can be done differently. So before closing, I would like just to present also the DIGITAfrica project. In this one, we are thinking about a comprehensive Pan-African research infrastructure in digital science. We have a workshop at Indaba to present the blueprint on which we are working, and also a small demo on device federated learning. So you are invited to the workshop. Thank you so much. Thank you also, Vikosi, for the invitation.
Okay, thanks so much for that. You can, I guess, now stop sharing.
Okay.
Yeah. I think one of the big items I wanted to ask is like, okay, practically a lot of people who are here have actually been just checking names as people who are building. So they are innovators. And they are faced with this dilemma, right, of
Yeah.
where now is data going to come from. And I wanted to maybe get your thoughts on practical things. If people are working currently, their projects that they've been running, there might be like, things that you've said that now have brought up thoughts, but what could be some of the pragmatic things to think about. And then as you answer that, for people who want to ask questions, if you want to speak out your question, please just raise your hand and then I'll acknowledge you. And then for those who can't unmute, you can write your question in the chat while Louis is answering.
Yes, thank you for that question, and I like this type of question, Marie-Vité. And yeah, for a practical example, so what we have been doing, for instance, in community networks, is that we first of all start the discussion with the community to identify their needs. And when we identify their needs, when planning the network, we know exactly which areas in the community we need to cover, which type of services we need also to provide them with. So, and going in that direction, and I really like the same concept as being considered in the playbook, the last playbook you published on the dataset creation for languages, and this is a good first step. So we need to go to the community, discuss with the community, identify the need of the community, and now what we can do for the datafication beyond, because at the beginning we still need a kind of a bootstrapping step. That means we need at least a small data set if we don't have a datafication already existing. And from that small data set, we will create now a service, maybe a mobile apps behind, that can help people while using it to produce also data that can help now to improve the process later. So this is a simple first step that we can do. But we need to start from the community for the adoption. Otherwise, they may not adopt your service. For the adoption, for the constraint also in which the service will be deployed and used so that they can easily adopt, and while they're adopting, they can now also start producing data. But the governance now, and that's why it is really important to work with community, because especially community that already owns maybe a small network, because especially in those communities, there's already a kind of governance. Even if it is only related to the network, this can also be easily extended now to include also issues related to data. So if you can find such a community close to you, this can be also a good first step to engage with them and to work with them toward starting such a process. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Emmy, you can ask your question.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you for organizing Vukosi. I'm not a builder, so I hope my questions will still be relevant. So I wanted to ask you if you agree with this statement that it's really datafication and dataset creation going together, because just listening to your presentation, but also just from my own understanding, I find that there's a symbiotic relationship. And even as you presented this this graph, I can't remember which slide, but the one that shows the use cases from the bottom going up, I wondered, I see them as looped, that they also feed into each other and they pipeline each other in a way. So I wonder whether you agree with that statement, that it's more it's rather and as opposed to versus. And then I wonder whether you also see an argument for dataset creation in the context of, the digital exclusion, cultural heritage, historical data, and that argument for epistemic justice. And then I like that you brought in the governance aspect at the end, because that was my other question around, some of these data sets that are more in the datafication, are close behind, corporate worlds, etc., telcos. So, that becomes a challenge. So we can't wait for them. Sometimes you just have to go out and collect the data. And then I would appreciate if the link could also be shared, the preprint could be shared on the chat so we can access it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. And I was expecting such a question. Yeah, yes, there's a close link. In fact, it is a kind of pipe, between the datafication and the dataset creation. And if we go back to that slide, we have the real world, we have the datafication, and we have the dataset creation on top of the datafication. We are not replacing the dataset creation. No, the datafication is there to ease the process, not to replace the dataset creation. So, because at a certain point, we need to have a kind of annotation, even if the datafication, if it is well designed, it can ease also that process. But we still need to have a kind of dataset creation on the top of the datafication. The main idea behind this paper is that what we are doing currently, we are going from the real world phenomena to the dataset creation. That is really expensive. That is resource demanding, human demanding, and so on. And we can just look at what is happening now throughout the continent, and also the recent study, I think, from Microsoft going to 180 data sets that have been created, and realize that most of them are not really useful because they are lacking some important requirements that can help other people to leverage them. So, but in the datafication process, especially when it is done intentionally, we can easily incorporate element that can help now to get a kind of tabulate data that can easily be now organized to create data set. So we are not replacing. Now, you were talking also about, please, can you recall the last?
So the other one was just, is there an argument for, as you've kind of answered in the first set saying it's not a replacement, but just, reinforcing the second question around, and I see a chat also on the same around, is there still an argument for dataset creation, especially in low resource languages, which are still excluded, but also, promoting the conversations around epistemic justice and limiting digital exclusion. And then my final question was on governance and that datafication that's sometimes behind paid services, telcos, etc.
Thank you. I will take this one first, related especially to low resource languages, especially in areas. The real issue, the real problem is that if you pay attention, it is a kind of the first exclusion, especially for those languages, is that people who are speaking those languages are not really equipped with digital tools like other people. And where they are living, usually it is really in kind of rural areas or remote areas. If you want to have, if you want to find people speaking fluently some local languages, it is no more in town, because in town we have a kind of mixed languages and so on. But if you like to find people like that, you have to go where they are living. And those languages are dying because we don't have people who are speaking those languages, live in areas where the digital infrastructure are nearly not existing. So, and that's why things like community networks can really help to solve the first issue mainly related to the connectivity. And now, on the top of that, we can now think about how we can form that basic infrastructure, organize now the data collection on the top. And this can also help now to have a kind of local governance of what is going on in the community. So we cannot address, especially for, and it is not only about languages, it is also about everything concerning the culture, concerning the environmental data, and so on. So if we are not addressing the issue related to the connectivity in those areas, related to digital infrastructure in those areas, we will be investing a lot of effort to collect those data. So it is better for us to think about how we can design a kind of datafication, a very low scale, maybe a tier one datafication in that area that can help us, starting from a very small data collection process at the beginning, because we need to start from somewhere, a kind of bootstrap. Having a model, having a solution that can help now, as people are using, to create more data. And this can also help us to identify, because if you have longitudinal data, we can also conduct some study to see how the changes happen in the community. So rather than always going, collect data and building a model that sometimes will not be used later. And just before I forgot, I would like just maybe to help us to better understand again. When I was talking about starting from the community, this is for me the best way to do. If I go to a community, I would like maybe to collect data, maybe in local languages in some areas, or to help them to preserve their local languages. So what I will do is to first discuss with them about a need that can help them to improve their local activities. It can be maybe in agriculture, but agriculture is not enough. We need to be specific. Maybe maize, how to plant maize, or to identify diseases and so on. So from that point, I will be doing two things: developing the application, but also collecting the data that can help to design the interface in that local language, so that people can use it later. And as they are using, we can get more data, and we can think about more other initiatives that can help them. Because at that point, we are solving the issue of digital literacy, and we are also trying to putting the datafication, but also solving the issue of digital literacy that can ease the adoption of other services for those people. So this is my point of view. And now for the governance, for the datafication, I know that this was the business of a big tech company and so on. But in such a context now, if we already have a kind of small organization at the local level, like the community networks, for instance, they can easily, we can easily have a kind of, at the local level, a kind of awareness, but also a kind of policy that is compliant to the national one related to data protection and so on. But building the awareness at that level, we have already the framework like ISO that are being developed, that also maybe just slight changes or improvement to consider now continuous process rather than only data set. That can be, so we always have framework like that that can also help to mitigate. It's true that we cannot solve, but we can at least mitigate the issue of governance.
Let me quickly have Lithuanolo come in. But just before he speaks, there was a question from Abebe that African languages are still considered low resources. And is it premature to go from data set creation to datafication? And the other one from Hugiri, especially looking at the datafication blind spot, Kibulunga is currently focused on data set creation layer, building high quality speech data sets for 8 Bantu languages in the Eastern Congo, such as Mashi and others. Given your point on 16 about high cost and lack of reproducibility, how can a community-led initiative of ours operating will begin to transition from data set creation to sustainable datafication? And then Lithuanolo will ask his question, and you will have like 2 minutes or 3 minutes to Lithuanolo, go ahead. I'm sorry. Yeah,
I don't know. Maybe we need to organize another webinar because I'm not sure that I will be able to address all those questions. For the classification of low resource.
No. I'm saying Lithuanolo will be asking. So go ahead, Lithuanolo.
Thank you, guys. Greetings, everyone. I appreciate the opportunity. To be short, I'm busy on a project which might be answering what the presentation was presenting. So the project is a dual entity project, with one being an NPC and the other being a P2I, a private company. The private company is the infrastructure layer of the AI, and the NPC is the data, the AI, the data governance for the community and all of those stuff. So I wanted to ask Prof, since the question is how to invest in the public network to get all this data going and working. So my approach is that the product is for the institutions, for example, like a clinic, when they need the sovereign infrastructure, a community network infrastructure that they can communicate with the local community with, and also integrated with their connections within the clinic or what. So that's the product of the private company. So using the community-owned data, and that data belongs to the community, and it's going to be paid with royalties for data usage and all of that. So I wanted to know, how is that approach compared to everything being public? That's answering the sustainability part and the datafication, because if the institutions are the ones who are giving out the data to the communities and within, that's where that intelligence comes in. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. First of all, we are talking mostly about digital public infrastructure, because we are still, the paper is focusing on AI policy at the level of each country, including also the continental one. This is what is mainly observed in the strategy. They are always talking about digital public infrastructure. But now, it's not because we are talking about digital public infrastructure that we don't have maybe behind a kind of public-private partnership, because this is also another form that we observe. Sometimes we talk about public, but beyond the public it's public because it is owned by the state, but behind, usually we have a kind of public-private partnership. And especially for a certain domain like health and so on, it is a bit, let's say, we are talking about sensitive data. And talking about sensitive data, we also have a kind of regulatory framework that frame how such data are used for developing any type of services. So first of all, you need to pay attention because you need to be compliant with the local regulatory framework, especially using those data. So first of all, pay attention to that. And also what we are raising here is just to inform policymaker about the importance or the need to pay attention not only to data set creation, but also to the datafication process. So now how it will be implemented completely. We propose the framework, but now technically, for instance, the mobile application, the data from the mobile application, we talk about the ISO2 framework, but we still need to see how this can be incorporated. So it is still open. It is still open. We have, we still have to refine the whole process, but this is basically the first idea that I had in mind. So depending on the context where you are developing this approach, you can be compliant or not, but you have to look now on how you can have a kind of partnership. And that's why we were talking about community network regulatory framework. Because if we have such a framework, that means that if you are a community network, you can have now a regulatory framework that can help you to operate and to be compliant with the regulatory framework in the country. So the main point is mainly about the regulatory framework in your context now. I don't know if I answer your question.
Not quite, but I'll take it.
Sorry that maybe I didn't understand very well what you were saying.
So the question was more on we are building for community, yes, but the infrastructure of it is privately owned. Then the data that is handled is owned by the community. So the regulations, yes, there will be there is a regulation process for that. So the only thing I'm asking is that but I think you answered it, that if it's within the regulation, then it's something that's doable.
Yes, you have to pay attention to the regulation to avoid any kind of yes. Yeah.
So
Okay,
anyways, the full thing is,
I would ask, and maybe what Louis will ask is, I know that there's two comments that were still open, one from Abebe and the other one from Mugiri. If you can think about maybe writing out an answer, the chat for this is going to be still there. It's just that now, yes, we have to close. I want to say thank
I'm sending the link. To
the chat.
paper so that they can have access.
To
the paper.
And then I will work with Louis that the two questions that were there in the chat are also answered when we do update with the recording of this talk as well. We'll send everybody an update and then some written, maybe a paragraph on a written answers to those two questions.
They can feel free to send me also a question, maybe in via email, or I don't know. I can also be happy to respond, and also to welcome. I will welcome all the comments on the paper about maybe the limitation or other ideas and so on that people can may have. Yeah. Thank you.
No, thank you everybody for coming. The next seminar, and which will be hybrid, will be, I think, on the 22nd of July. We're just trying to resolve that once we've got that. I might be even wrong about that date, but it will be in July. I think it might be 27th, I think. But then that will come in, and then it will be hybrid. So for people who are at University of Pretoria, it'll be easy to come in. But then we'll send everybody that update. So all right, thank you, and have a good day.
Thank you.
Bye.